bad. Good.
Welcome, everyone, to Season 4, Episode 135 of the Premier Pod. I'm your host, Yashbika, joined by my co-host, Tyler Chan. And it's a pretty interesting episode. This will be our European Champions League, Europa League, Europa Conference League kind of semi-preview of the knockout stages. We were promising this episode a while back, but finally we have a kind of a, I wouldn't even say an open week, but just a week that kind of makes sense for it since the draw happened on Monday. But before we get into that, news that happened this morning is unfortunately Sergio Aguero had to retire from football because of a heart condition. He suffered during a match at Barcelona when he was playing for Barcelona, and he announced his retirement in front of the Barcelona squad in the Camp Nou in a press conference. So sad times as one of the probably best strikers, best players of this generation. Had to retire at a pretty early age at 33 because, as we've seen from other athletes, that especially the likes of Ronaldo and Messi, they can continue playing at a high level past 30. But unfortunately, he had to call it quits and hang up the boots a little bit earlier than expected. But it was a heartfelt, I guess, retirement speech, just like any retirement speech was. But obviously, when a good player or one of their favorite players retires, it always brings up, I guess, memories of some of the biggest moments or best moments from him. And for Aguero, obviously the moment that sticks out with everyone is, the Aguero Martin Tyler call from 2012 when he won Manchester City the Premier League title. And it was that goal, that winning goal to help them win the game that helped them win the title because they were level on points or Manchester United were a point above them in the Premier League table at that day. And, that's why Martin Tyler says that you'll never see anything like this again because those two teams were neck and neck going into the final day of the season. United win, they're on top, and City needed the win to get above them to finish top of the table. And Aguero at in stoppage time produced probably one of the best moments I would say in world football. That'll probably go down in history as like people just will watch this scene or watch this clip on YouTube for years upon years upon years, and it'll be within Premier League lore and just world football lore. But that's obviously a memory that probably sticks out with most people with Aguero. But I guess for
Yeah.
me,
It
if you,
really, even
yeah,
kickstarted, Man City's
yeah,
reign this past decade where
that
they
was
just
their
went on a
first Premier
tear.
League title. He helped
Mhm.
them win.
And, you still see that celebration from him just running around shirtless, swinging around his shirt like a washing machine cycle, just running down like crazy. And it was ever since then, Man City has been on a pretty dominant reign, and Aguero's been one of the most clinical strikers in the past decade. And whenever you can think of a Premier League striker, you usually think of Sergio Aguero. It's unfortunate too because in the past several seasons, we've seen him suffer a few injuries that just kind of been lingering throughout the whole season. Like you usually don't see him starting many
Yeah, he
games
only won one
consecutively.
Golden Boot, I think, which is
Mhm.
crazy.
That too. And then especially during his last couple seasons at Man City, you barely saw him play. Like his final season at Man City, he only played 12 games
Hmm.
in the Premier League, and then for Barcelona, he only played 4,
Yeah,
and he scored 1 goal, and this 1 goal was in El Clasico. So, it's just little things like that where it's just the decline was there, the signs were there, the writing was on the wall, and it's a shame to see a player like this of this caliber, like a legend, be forced to retire due to a health condition. Like it wasn't really his own choice; it's more like he just had to do it just based on his own conditions there. So,
hmm
we got to give him his time. He's got to give him the praise and kind of respect that he deserves for a really good career he's had for Barcelona, the little 5 games he had, but mainly Man City,
yeah,
Atletico
Atletico.
Madrid,
Yeah, and then
and
Independiente is like Argentine club he started his senior career in Argentina. Uh, but yeah, his records kind of speak for himself. Like he has scored career total international and club 420 goals. He has won. He's a 5-time Premier League champion. If I believe I'm correct there, but he also has the most hat tricks in the Premier League with 12. He has the highest goal to game ratio in the Premier League. I think it's like at 1.08 or something like that, but it's the best goal to game ratio in the Premier League by any player ever. His stats to speak for himself. He was one of the most clinical strikers. He's Man City's all-time goal scorer. It's unfortunate that he wasn't able to cap off his City, I guess, club career with a Champions League title. Obviously, they lost to Chelsea in the Champions League final, but I mean, he pretty much won everything he could at Chelsea, bar the Champions League. He was a clinical striker, was an amazing striker. But I remember one thing that kind of sticks out with me is when Pep Guardiola came in. I remember when he initially came into Man City, it was almost like Pep Guardiola was trying to phase out kind of the old City guard of the likes of Joe Hart, Vincent Company, David Silva, Sergio Aguero, and obviously Joe Hart was the first one to leave. But then with Sergio Aguero, a lot of talk was that he was going to get shipped out, and this was when Aguero was, I believe, still probably 28 or 29, and it was like still peak Aguero. And I thought a lot of people thought Pep Guardiola was crazy, but one of the things Pep says is that Aguero has to get used to the way I want to play in terms of the system that I want to develop here at City. And kudos to Aguero. I mean, that just shows how good of a player he was. Is that he was able to adapt his game at kind of a later stage in his career, and he ended up becoming an even better striker in the Pep Guardiola system. And he scored a ton of goals there, and he basically became one of Pep's favorite players, even though sometimes the relationship can be a bit odd. And he was trying to, maybe make Gabriel Jesus be like the next, Aguero. But as we saw, each time Gabriel Jesus kind of had a shot to be the number one striker at City, he kind of did not live up to the expectation. And that's probably because Aguero set the bar so high that Gabriel Jesus just couldn't reach it. And that probably, even though the Aguero moment with Martin Tyler is iconic, but that's one of the things that stuck up with me with Aguero was that he was able to write it out with Pep and kind of reconfigure his game to Pep's style, and that allowed him to be at City for a longer time than expected when Pep initially came.
Hmm. And even under Pep Guardiola, he's kind of solidified his legend not only in the Premier League but also for Man City too. He's basically their, if I'm not mistaken, their top goal scorer in club history.
Yeah,
So that is something that'll probably be there for a little bit longer because their their team doesn't really have a striker still to this day. Like
yeah,
it's basically been Sergio Aguero for the past decade, and there hasn't been anyone that can fill his shoes. And it was supposed to be Gabriel Jesus, but that hasn't been the case.
yeah,
So right now, his reign and his legend still kind of reigns on. It still kind of haunts him to this day. It's like, man, you can't really replace him, even when you want to. And even when he was still there, they're like, no, he can't replace me. I'm Kun Aguero, man. I'm too OP.
yeah.
So
So no, I agree. His legacy, I guess, is forever, I guess, enshrined in Premier League lore and history because, yeah, his records, as I said, speak for himself. And unfortunately, his time at Barcelona was cut short and his career was cut short. But I mean, he wanted everything. Won Copa America this past year with Argentina. Finally, won a major trophy with them. I mean, yeah. What else can you say? Sergio Aguero. He will be missed, but hopefully, we'll get a lot of like some cool FIFA Twitch stream moments from him nowadays. Like when he'll be
that's true.
streaming
He is
on
a
Twitch.
streamer.
Yeah,
It'll be cool to see him. If FIFA makes an icon or something for him, then he can continue to live on. But it
yeah.
makes it
He'll
sound
be
like
the
he's
one of the
dying
first
in
few
real life.
icon players that I could say like, oh, I saw him play in real life. Like I know the Wayne Rooney and Lampard and Gerrard and obviously Robin van Persie are one of the newerish icons, or Iker Casillas as well. But Aguero was like, you know, I mean that's pretty cool that you can say like, oh, I watched this player play and now he's like a legend in a game. It's
Hmm.
pretty crazy. So
It makes me feel old.
yeah. So like we said, Sergio Aguero, kudos to his career, fantastic career, and unfortunately cut short at the end due to the heart condition. But what can you say? It's Sergio Aguero. It's Kun Aguero. So one of the best
Kun
strikers
Aguero.
of this generation, best players. But moving on to the Champions League draw, very interesting here was because if you, I guess, weren't paying attention Monday morning, the draw happened around 5 a.m. Eastern time in the United States, the first draw. And we say the first draw because there was an error in the computer system, as UEFA says, as what UEFA claims. And the error was that for Atletico Madrid, the way they do the draw is that they have the runners up in the group. Their ball gets drawn out first. And then in the opposite, I guess, the bowl that's right next to it is the team that finished first. And the way the draw works for the round of 16 is that you cannot draw the any team that you played in your group, and you also can't draw a team from the same nation. So that meant that there was only a select few of options that Atletico Madrid could draw as a potential round of 16 opponent, and Manchester United were one of those options. But Manchester United's ball was not in that, I guess, bowl as one of the options. So because of that, Atletico Madrid, I believe, drew Bayern, and I kind of missed this part, but Villarreal accidentally got drawn against Manchester United. And if you didn't know, Manchester United did play Villarreal in the Champions League group stage, so that couldn't have happened. And because of that, United actually drew PSG, and everyone was going crazy because we thought we were getting Ronaldo, Messi again somehow in the Champions League. But there was a lot of uproar, especially from Atletico Madrid. They were like phoning UEFA and just saying this is unfair, like you can't do it. And I think part of it was because they drew Bayern, but eventually they were able to get their, I guess their claims. Their claims were heard, and UEFA basically had to do a redraw. And because of that redraw, there was a couple matchups that stayed the same. Somehow Chelsea ended up facing Lille. Like I don't know how they got away with just getting Lille again, but a couple ones that did change was Real Madrid got matched up with PSG. Liverpool, instead of getting RB Salzburg in the first, I guess, initial draw or the fake draw, they ended up getting Inter Milan. Sporting
Oh.
will play Manchester City. Atletico got drawn against Manchester United, and Villarreal will play Juventus, and then Benfica and Ajax as like the last round of 16. So it was a very convoluted, very messed up draw. Classic UEFA to kind of rig this or make it seem really shady and fishy. So, kudos to them. They somehow managed to pull it off. But yeah, it was a very interesting draw. I know a lot of teams were upset, happy, not happy about the redraw. I feel bad kind of for Real Madrid. I think they had initially had Benfica as a round of
Mhm.
16 opponents, and now they have PSG. So it was just kind of a mess up of a grand scale on UEFA. It was just a bad look on UEFA, even though they already have a really terrible look right now. That was a very bad look to mess up the draw of the Champions League round of 16.
That's already really shady of a organization as well, because back in the days they had the warm balls kind of, what's it called? What's the word? I guess scandal, where I mean for these draws is literally they have teams wrapped up in like a little ball that a
Yeah,
player would reach into a bowl for. Kind of like if you watch like the Georgia like like lottery, and then they spit out the
yeah,
four balls and numbers for the day for then
yeah.
that's the lottery. Like this is literally what the same is. It's like the same old fashioned ways, or it's just teams are in a bowl, and then whatever player like picks out the teams that match up against each other, like that's how they do it. So back in the days, there's a rumor that they would warm up some balls so they can get matchups specifically, where it's like, all right, they know like a specific team's warm in the bowl, so then they just use that to get certain matchups. But for this one, it's just all apparently computer
Error.
algorithm error. So I was like, okay, whatever that means. But yeah, this is kind of a rough one for at least from a Liverpool fan, because we had RB Salzburg, which is I would say one of the easier matchups to get in this.
Hmm.
And then now we switch to Inter Milan, which are the top team in the Serie A right now.
Yeah.
So
I mean, you'd probably be better off drawing Juventus because are like they're in sixth place right now in Serie A.
that's true. And then also, I feel like with Inter Milan, they're just sending Liverpool back to Milan. So they just really want everyone in Milan to just hate Liverpool. No matter if you're AC Milan fan or Inter Milan fan, they just want they
Yeah,
just
send
want
them
to
back
send
to
Liverpool
Italy.
back. So another matchup in the San Siro right there. But for I want to quickly go into that Real Madrid versus PSG matchup. That's going to be probably the biggest matchup in the next round of I guess 16, because
Yeah.
this this is going to be basically Messi either exits the competition early, or Real Madrid with Benzema, Vinicius Jr. They all exit early. It's going to be one of those two.
Mbappe's time to shine at the Bernabeu. His
I
new
know
home. Potentially
it's
his new home. You
this
never
is
know.
his tryout. This is
Yeah.
his interview right now. This is his what's the word for it? The Not the
Showcase.
behavioral. No, not the show. It's like how you have a behavioral interview and then case study. Yeah, this is a case study for him. So there we go. I don't know. I'm gonna straight up say right now, this is probably not even a hot take, but I think Real Madrid have the advantage in this one
Yeah.
already, just because they're the hottest team right now in La Liga. I believe they're first in the league,
Yeah, they're
and they
like
just
miles
beat
ahead. Everyone.
yeah, they dismantled Atletico Madrid pretty recently, who's basically like the closest runner up to them in the La Liga. And then PSG, meanwhile, didn't really do too well in their own group. Like
Mhm.
lost to Bayern, and they did beat out the other teams, obviously, to make it into
You
the
mean
next
they lost
round.
to Man City
Oh,
in
yeah,
the
yeah, they
group
lost to
stage,
Man
yeah.
City. But for this, I don't know, they just don't seem as powerful, even with Messi, as previous seasons. Like, I mean, I know under Tuchel they made it to the Champions League final, but under Pochettino, I just feel like it hasn't been as strong. And this Real Madrid side, I feel like this is like the worst time to face them. Even though it's going to be in a few months, it's I don't know, it's just something's not right about this PSG team. It just feels like there's not enough chemistry built enough yet, and it's just something about them. It just doesn't feel right. It's hard to
Yeah,
put my finger on it. It just feels like if you just chucked a bunch of good players onto one team, and it's just 11 good players right now. It kind of reminds me of how you described Manchester United for many weeks under Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. It's just that's kind of what I feel like PSG is right now.
yeah, I think that's a good shout, because with PSG, they are runaway favorites in Ligue 1. They are doing really well in Ligue 1, but if you ever watch any of their games in Ligue 1, it's not exactly like they're dominating them. A lot of times it's they're getting away with, late goals, or their defense is conceding a lot of cheap goals and they kind of rely on some individual brilliance to kind of get them through. Really haven't clicked, especially the front three of Messi, Neymar, and Mbappe this whole season. They really haven't clicked 100%. It's been at spurts, you would see a little bit of clicking here and there. But when all three of them play together, it's been very rare when all of them have scored or all of them have assisted, and a lot of them are just all syncing up. And it also doesn't bode well with Pochettino's system, which requires a lot of high pressing and a lot of off the ball, grunt work per se. Because Mbappe, Messi, and Neymar, when they are playing, they don't do a lot of the dirty work that's required for a Pochettino system. So because of that, you're seeing a lot of the, I guess, kind of stranded players, or a lot of times you see the midfielders kind of doing all the dirty work or the leg work, but that leaves other parts of their team really exposed because their front three doesn't do a lot of the pressing back, to help protect their entire team. So it's very weird. I think the PSG job in general is very hard because you're being asked to throw away all tactics and basically find a way to accommodate three of some of the best players in the world, probably top five, top 10 players, like two top five, and then one top 10 player in the world, all into one team. And it's impossible almost. And then not to mention that, Sergio Ramos potentially going back to the Bernabeu, but I think he's only played like one or two games with PSG because he's been hurt most of the
Mhm,
time. Keylor Navas potentially making a comeback. I mean, there's a lot of interesting subplots here in this game, but the like you said, in terms of advantage, definitely I think Real Madrid have the better advantage because I think they play a little bit better as a team. And then they also have Vinicius Jr. and Karim Benzema. And Vinicius Jr. has been on almost another level this season. He's like raised his game, you know, to another level because I guess like the past two seasons, a lot of people just thought Vinicius was kind of an overhyped kid and almost like a flop. But
mhm.
he has kind of proved his doubters wrong this season because he's just been performing at a really high level, scoring a ton of goals, assisting, just being a lot more consistent. And
Yeah, he
Benzema
got
has,
player of the month in,
yeah, La
La Liga
Liga,
this past month.
exactly.
So,
And then Benzema also has been scoring a ton, and he's been on the same level as Mo Salah this season in terms of being one of the best in the world right now. So I definitely think Real Madrid have the advantage.
and I feel like PSG's biggest weakness, honestly, is their in my opinion, their defense, just based on the Champions League games I've watched of them
Yeah.
this past season. So I don't know. I think it's gonna be a shootout almost for this matchup, but that's gonna be kind of sad to see if like a Neymar, Messi, Mbappe team gets eliminated so early, or even a Real Madrid side with Benzema, Vinicius, my boy Tony Cruz, or I guess my old boy because he's old man now. But Tony Cruz, one of my favorite players all time. It's just I rather have the Man United PSG match. I'm not gonna lie, see Messi versus Ronaldo again.
Hey, but
But
if PSG go through, maybe if like United go through too, it might be even more spectacular to have them play later in the matchup, later in the Champions League um,
mm,
knockout
I
round.
don't, I don't think it's happening. But I would say for you though, Yash, Atletico Madrid versus Manchester United. That's a pretty good matchup replacement for y'all because
Yeah, I would say it's
Atletico
definitely a
Madrid.
lot. It's I would say it's definitely a lot easier because I think the thing that struggled United have struggled with is dealing, I guess, defensively. They've kind of been all over the place when Rafael Varane's not playing,
Mhm,
and PSG's front three, as we said, are at times they don't look very in sync, but individually they still have all the power and all the skill to kind of sauce up a defender or, get by a defender really easily and basically leave De Gea 1v1. And yeah, De Gea is capable of making those saves, but he probably couldn't do it the full, you know, two legs of the knockout round. And one thing I guess we forgot to mention is that the knockout round, the rules are a little bit different this year. They've gotten rid of the away goals rule, so there's no longer that away goal advantage anymore in the Champions League. So I guess in a lot of ways, it kind of favors the better team overall to kind of go through because now you can't really rely on a sit back, hit them on the break in the away side, and then go home and just defend the lead. So that's why I think I know a lot of people are saying Atletico Man United might be a bit of a toss up, but I'll give the edge to United because not only do they have the better player, Ronaldo, but as we know, Ronaldo's kind of been Atletico Madrid's kryptonite because the guy always seems to score against them in the Champions League and breaks their hearts. But I think the way Atletico Madrid kind of set up, and also they have not been the same Atletico Madrid that you've seen in the past 5 seasons. This team is struggling in La Liga. They struggled in the Champions League. They needed the last day of the Champions League to get in to the knockout stages. So it really hasn't been a vintage Atletico Madrid side, so I think they're pretty vulnerable at times. So that's why I'm going to give the edge to Manchester United because they do have the best player in the Champions League. The guy that always seems to come up clutch whenever they need him. That's Ronaldo. So I wouldn't bet against Ronaldo scoring a winner or somehow picking up a late goal and doing something to get them through in this matchup.
And we've seen with Atletico Madrid when they're on a high press, on a Gengen press kind of team as their opposition, they kind of struggle. They got a red card in both matchups against Liverpool.
Yeah,
So I think that's going to happen. Well, I don't think they're going to get a red card again. I think they'll probably learn their lesson.
yeah,
But I mean, with Ralph Radnick now at Manchester United, that kind of just gives Diego Simeone more headaches. It's like, oh, not only that does he have to deal with Ronaldo, but now the Gengen press once again. And with Atletico Madrid, also, I believe Suarez just got injured recently.
hmm
I'm not sure how serious the injury is, but they're pretty reliant, I believe, on Suarez, Griezmann up top, and that's basically about it. I mean, they have like Correa, but I
yeah,
mean,
yeah. Because Carrasco really hasn't done too much. João Felix is nowhere to be seen, unfortunately.
yeah, he's not been. I mean, he was really good against Liverpool in the second, in the return leg,
Yeah, but
and like,
consistently just doesn't play enough and
yeah,
doesn't
that's
score
also a thing
enough,
too.
especially in La Liga. Um, yeah, it's just this Atletico side. It's not a vintage. You don't really think of this as like a vintage Diego Simeone at Atletico side that can just hit you on the counter attack and is just very dangerous to play against. I don't know. Something just seems a bit off about them this year, and
Yeah, I just feel like also just having those key center mids like Saul kind of removed from the team, Koke maybe not in his prime anymore. Like that kind of transition is just not there to connect the front to the back for like those quick transitions that Atletico is so used to because they're a very highly defensive team. Like whenever you think of Atletico Madrid, you think of like Oblak and their whole defensive back. But recently it just hasn't really been the same. And I feel like Joao Felix, he has all the potential to be like the next Kaká from Brazil back in the days, but he's just in a system that doesn't really fit to his style. So he's just basically nerfed while, while he's at Atletico Madrid. He has all this potential, but just not in the right system, I feel like, for him. So it's just like a lot of little things where it's just their players maybe not getting the best out of the system and also because of the system itself, but also just the system kind of hinders based on who they have available. It's just like it's not the same players that they used to have that can, kind of make do of what Diego Simeone wants in his vision.
yeah, it's
So
also an
I
older Griezmann too. It's not like you
yeah,
got prime Griezmann too.
there's number 8 Griezmann on his back, not the 7. Not the hype beast one. But I think United, I'll give you all the edge. I think United have a pretty good chance of going through.
Let's
As a
hope they somehow managed to find a way to disappoint. But yeah, I mean this one I would say next to Real Madrid PSG is probably the next probably most interesting one because of the brand name of both, but also Ronaldo against Atletico again, and all the kind of mini storylines there. And then Bayern RB Salzburg, it seems pretty intuitive that Bayern's going to knock them out pretty easily. Juve via Real could be interesting because Juve have been struggling a lot in Serie A, but they do decently well in the Champions League. But I don't know. That one's kind of a toss up, but both teams kind of are struggling in the league. So I'd probably give the edge to Juventus just because they have, you know, some players that can make the difference at times, even though they're not
Dybala
very. Yeah,
and
Eh,
Chiesa.
yeah. Chiesa, I would say more. Dybala has been kind of off this season.
I just like his hair,
Yeah,
but
he's like 28, I think.
what the heck?
Yeah, he's almost 30. Someone said that he's the baby
No.
face merchant. He's a baby face merchant.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, that makes
Jeez.
you feel old. I thought he was. It was crazy when I saw it because I legit thought he was still 25 or 26 at least.
Well, I'm depressed now, so I mean, the Yellow Submarine kind of made it their way here. They made it
Yeah,
out of a pretty tough group and beat Atalanta on the last day to get
yeah.
here. So, I
Unai
mean,
Emery,
Villarreal have a chip on their shoulder, if anything.
Unai Emery's bus or submarine.
Yes. But I mean, Unai Emery's also, this is not his competition, so who
Yeah.
knows? He might soil it. This is like, oh, wait, oh, shoot, we messed up. We're not in the Europa League.
Yeah, so we'll see what happens there, and then Benfica Ajax. I would say the edge is to Ajax because it seems like they're kind of set up for a magical run again where they did it in 20 was it that was
19.
28 yeah 2018-19 where they made it
Yeah.
all the way to the semis but then lost to Tottenham to Lucas Moura. And then Chelsea versus Lille. I don't know how Chelsea pulled the voodoo magic and got Lille again. Seems like they just got a perfect
With the
matchup.
warm balls, dude.
Yeah, warm
It's the
balls, man.
juice.
They just somehow escaped. They could have drawn Bayern, and they couldn't get Bayern. I mean, that's just really lucky on Chelsea's part. So Chelsea should go through. There's no reason why they shouldn't go through, but they'll go through. They'll go
Yeah,
through.
I have no honest. I'm gonna be honest. I barely know enough about Leo as it is. I only know they have this one
they have
Canadian striker named
they have
David,
Jonathan David. They have Tim
Jonathan
Weah.
David,
Yeah,
and Tim Weah.
yeah, but that's about it. I don't know too.
Wait, where's Renato Sanchez? Is he also there?
Yeah, he's
Okay,
also
so
there.
and then Anthony
Um,
Lopez. Maybe I do
yeah.
know more about this than I thought.
Hey, but I
Thiago
think
Diallo.
Chelsea are still the stronger side, so they
Yeah,
should
this
go
is
through.
like what the heck?
Yeah,
This is like
yeah. And
what
then
the juice?
Sporting, I feel like Man City, they somehow always get a super easy team either in the group stage or in the early knockout stage. And this time, no disrespect to Sporting, but Sporting out of all these teams we've listed out are kind of more on the weaker side,
Yes,
comparatively. So Manchester City, they somehow got another kind of cheese team to just go through or like just skate by.
it's not fair. Like Chelsea and Man City both get easy opponents, and Liverpool get number one team in Serie A right now. What the heck? I mean, I will say this: Liverpool won all their matches in the group stages, so I have full confidence in them to beat Inter Milan. But at the same time, man, I'd
It'll
rather
be
take
tough.
Sporting. Yeah, it's gonna be a
It'll
tough matchup.
Yeah, because Inter Milan, I think AC Milan's doing well in Serie A, but Inter Milan they did win the Scudetto last season when they won Serie A. But um, yeah, Inter Milan they have a pretty good team because they have good center backs, they have good goalkeeper, they have a really good forward in Lautaro Martinez. Then they have like this partnership with him and Dzeko. They have Hakan Çalhanoğlu.
Who also got player of the match or
Yeah,
player of the month in Serie
yeah,
A this past
he's
month.
been doing really well in Serie A and like for Inter this season. So
Oh,
I mean, I
I
think
mean,
Liverpool should go through. They have the stronger side.
they
They've
do.
got the coach, so you would hope that Liverpool's experience will take them through because Liverpool got out of round of 16 last season, right? Or did they fall in the round of
No,
16?
they got out. It's just
Who did they beat in the round of 16 last season?
it wasn't Porto. It was I'm always thinking Porto for some reason. We like to get matched up with them. It escapes me, but I do know. Shoot, who was it? Maybe it was.
Because I
I'm
can't
blanking,
remember.
but it's maybe it was just bad news. That's why I just whenever something bad happens, it just erased from my memory. So I'm
Mm,
guessing. I feel like it was a round of 8 when Liverpool got eliminated,
yeah,
if I remember correctly. But I mean, for this matchup, I think Inter Milan is also one of the top teams with the most goals in Serie A too.
hmm
So I would say their main advantage is goal scoring. So Liverpool is going to be having the English just went out. But their defense, Liverpool's defense, could be truly tested here. So if Liverpool find a way to kind of shut them down and kind of stop Inter Milan's attack, I think that'll be the key, especially stopping Nico Barella, the the little man, the little aggressive man that
Yeah.
seems to be like everywhere. He's like it's Italy's Conte, except who can shoot and pass a little better. But
Yeah.
I mean, it's just those little things. It'll be a cool matchup just because it'll be a like a tight match in my opinion. I think it's gonna be a very underrated matchup, but I'd just rather have the easy one.
Yeah.
I
You
will
like
say Liverpool that run when they won the Champions League, they had a really hard knockout stage like road, if I remember correctly. Well,
they
Tottenham had
played
a
Porto?
slightly easier one. They,
Oh, they played Bayern, right? Then Bayern, Barca.
yes, and then I'm just getting my memory just flushed down the toilet right now. We're gonna take a quick segment to just Google this.
No, I think they did play Barca, or I know they played Barca when they made it, but I do believe they played Bayern right before that in the quarterfinals,
Let me see. This
and then
is
they played
where
Porto.
editing is just gonna edit this part out. Future Tyler. But let me see. Okay. So for Liverpool, it was Bayern Munich in the first round of 16, Porto in the quarterfinals, Barcelona in the semifinals, and then Tottenham in the finals. So yeah,
Nice.
nice.
Yeah. So, I mean, I feel like, in the Champions League, you can't escape playing the hard teams. Eventually, you're going to have to face a really good team. Um, so maybe, hey, if you get it out, maybe if you face a better team earlier in the round, maybe you might face an easier one in the
Later
quarterfinals.
on.
Yeah.
And then you also have some momentum because Man City in that same year, they faced Schalke first, who's
Yeah.
not very good. And then they lost to Tottenham in the quarterfinals. So
I think
Tottenham.
what was that? They had that. It was like the when football kind of came back. I remember they had Leon in the semifinals, and they like, or no, in the quarterfinals, and they fumbled the bag against Leon.
I think it was 2018.
Yeah, and Leon was close to. No, it was the 2020. I think it was like when they came back from lockdown to finish off the Champions League run.
I just remember our good friend Cho went to that game.
Oh wow.
Oh no, he went to the group stage game. That's what it was. A lot of shout outs out here. But
But regardless, it doesn't. In the grand scheme of things, you'll face a hard opponent in the Champions League. But overall, even though they had to retake the draw, I thought the draws were pretty decent and they were pretty fair per se. Obviously, PSG, Real Madrid, and Atletico, and Manchester United kind of steal the show in terms of top matchups. Then you could throw in like Inter versus Liverpool, but overall, pretty good draw. And I wanted to end I guess, this Champions League segment with like one last question: who is the Premier League team most likely to win it? Because we actually did have all four Premier League teams make it past the group stage, so now we have probably the best shot out of all leagues because we have the most teams out of any league to make it to the knockout stage. So who do you got?
it's more content from the Premier Pod. There we go.
Yeah,
I gotta say Liverpool. I gotta support my own team because right now, just based on Champions League form in itself, Liverpool are, I would say, one of the hottest, if not the hottest, since they won out,
yeah,
didn't lose a single match. So that's an easy one. And also everyone's fit this year. So last year there's a lot more of an injury crisis with basically every center back at Liverpool injured, whereas this season Klopp's done a lot better of a job rotating that center back duo, where it's almost like Man City, like where you just don't know who's going to start. You just
hmm
know it's going to be Van Dyke, and then his partner is going to be someone different every week. Could be Konate, could be Matip, could
no
be
context, Joel Matip.
yeah, no context Joel Matip. Just follow that Twitter account. That's one of the best ones ever. Even Van Dyke shows everyone. I think he even shows Joel Matip every day. The the latest picture from the from the page daily.
There's one
But
for Eric Bailly, and there's one no context Eric Bailly where in the Champions League it was like they've already qualified, so they were playing young boys. So every time he went for the tackle, he did like a mini spin after like doing the tackle, and then he would just
oh
get
my
up.
gosh,
And there was just like a compilation of 4 or 5 times in the game where he just went down to the floor, did a spin, and got up. I'm like, he's the best defender ever.
dude, that's why all these. If you have a meme account, like even the legend Phil Jones, throwback to him. Like usually it's good mojo. So I'm just gonna say at least for me, Liverpool have that momentum right now.
Hmm.
And I will say Man United I'm going to say are a little underrated in this competition just because they have Ronaldo.
Yeah.
Ronaldo, this is his competition. So, and
And they
like
have Rafa
anything's
Varane,
possible.
who should hopefully come back. Rafael Varane, who should hopefully come back by the time these knockout stages come through too.
Hmm.
That's
And
like big
also
time players.
with Ralph Radnick at the helm instead this time, you have no idea how they're going to do. So it could
Yeah.
be really good, but also could be they could fumble it. They could fumble it, so you never know. But I'm going to give the edge to Liverpool.
Yeah. I think that's a fair shot. I'm going to be a little biased here. I'm going to go with Manchester United.
Just pick their
Uh,
own teams.
yeah. But I'll give my bias pick, and I'll probably give like I guess a more general pick. But for me, bias wise, I think if you just look at how the competition is, the Champions League, I guess shown, or the has history has shown, is that it doesn't necessarily mean just because you are the better team doesn't mean all the time that you're going to go through and win it. Because there's been times where we've seen upsets of a team, the underdog team, the team that doesn't necessarily have all the superstars or has everyone fit, but somehow can just get a 90 minutes together to just pull out the dub. And I feel like Manchester United, even though they're not under Ole and they don't have kind of like that weird juju going on, I know with Ralph, there's going to be a new system in play, but the way the Manchester United squad is kind of built, obviously you have Ronaldo, but we also have other players that are capable of making some big time plays and some big time moments when called upon. Like David De Gea is capable of making a big save when called upon. Ronaldo, as we've seen, is capable of making a big goal, being really clutch. Bruno Fernandes can kind of pull something out of his hat. Paul Pogba, if he plays, can do something spectacular. Rashford, if he gets back in form. Jadon Sancho, who's slowly starting to regain some of that form. So even though at times the team can be a little chaotic, I feel like for the Champions League, they kind of have that weird blend of like maybe it could work. Because, if we remember Real Madrid when they went on that crazy run of three peats, you wouldn't say they're necessarily the best team in terms of overall style and kind of dominance, but they had big game players like Casemiro, Modric, Cruz,
Cruz.
Ronaldo. They had those big game players that could make the big game plays when they were called upon. And I think United have a decent amount of those players. So that's why I think in some of these tough matchups, United could escape with the victory just because they have some of those meta players in a sense that can come up in those clutch moments. And obviously, Ronaldo kind of built his legacy and his career off those clutch moments in the Champions League. So that's why I'm rolling with Manchester United. But if I had to give kind of a more fair balance pick, just looking at it, I'd probably lean towards Liverpool as well, just because they have Jurgen Klopp, who's won it recently. Overall, really good balanced squad. Mo Salah's playing at peak. I think Chelsea might face like Champions League runner-up type of, or Champions League next season after winning it, kind of a hangover, and they might get catched because I think we've seen recently that if you do play your cards right, you can catch this team sleeping at times. I think Man City, I think since they don't have a actual striker, it's going to hurt them. And we've seen with Pep that when it comes to the Champions League, sometimes he overthinks it a bit. So that's why I'm going to go with Liverpool. But bias pick, I'm going Manchester United, and I also think, generally speaking, they do have a good chance of potentially winning it or getting really further into the competition.
You kind of labeled Man U as a dark horse.
Yeah, yeah,
And which is ironic because they literally have Ronaldo.
yeah,
A team with Ronaldo's a dark horse right here. But I mean, that being said, kind of more generally too, all four Premier League teams, they have a pretty good shot.
yeah. You could
And
make a
this is
case for all four.
yeah, you could. I just Chelsea winning it last year just made no sense to me still to
Yeah,
this day.
just I definitely don't want to see Manchester City winning it, but they definitely have the squad capable of making a run
Mhm.
and pulling off the thing and winning it.
If they can just find a midfielder to catch fire near the later stages and just get the goals that way, which I mean they could, a Sterling, a Kevin De Bruyne.
Yeah,
They lost
Ferran
Ferran
Torres.
Torres. They lost him. I think that he's going to Barcelona.
Oh, has he already signed the
Probably do.
contract?
I believe he has, but I'm not sure about when he's
Okay.
particularly transferring because he's supposed to be, I guess, Aguero's replacement. I
Yeah.
guess Barcelona is going to do the same thing. They're just going to replace their striker with a winger.
Yeah.
But they do have Luke De Jong and Memphis Depay, which is the difference. So they actually do have some other strikers there. But
Yeah.
geez. But anyways, yeah, there we go. Oh yeah, kind of quick to mention Barcelona. didn't make it into the knockout stages.
Yeah, in the Europa League.
They're in the Europa League for the
First,
first time in
not in
I
club
think since I
history,
was
but
born.
first time they're playing in the Europa League since 2001 or 2, when it used to be called the UEFA Cup, before they
Dang.
rebranded the Europa League. So, yeah, tough times for Barcelona. It looks like they're not going to be anywhere near the top four or make it to qualify for the Champions League because they are struggling. They have no money. Xavi, first like big time job. So pray for my Barcelona peeps out there. It's tough times out there, but hopefully, a big superpower like that, hopefully they can get it together and become a superpower again sometime soon. But right now, it's not
Yeah,
looking too good. But
but,
Europa
you know,
League, there were some pretty good teams that came out of that fell out of the Champions League. Dortmund's now in the Europa League. Sevilla, obviously, that's their competition, is in the Europa League. Barca, as we said, obviously their squad is not that good, but they also have Napoli. In the Europa League. They were already in it, but the Europa League is pretty strong. And one thing they actually changed the rules again this year is that any team in the group stage of the Europa League that won their group actually essentially got a first round bye of the round. They got the round of 32 bye, and they will pay Europa League again once the round of 16 picks up. So that means West Ham. If you were looking at the Europa League schedule and we're kind of freaking out, like what happened to West Ham? Did they get eliminated? No, they just were good enough to get a bye, which in a lot of ways, I think it works, but also I think it might hurt them because if you're a team that's kind of in good form in a competition, oftentimes that what kills you the most is the extended bye or extended weeks off you have from the competition. So I think this might end up hurting them more than anything else, which is a weird thing to say when you have a bye.
I don't know. For me, I always like to have a little break before like a
Okay,
competition like this because I know momentum wise, you feel like you kind of lose it just due to timing, where it's just like, oh, I didn't play for a little bit. But I feel like one of my biggest things for what
this
makes a team good is like availability. So it's like just one less game to, prevent an injury that could have occurred
that's
maybe in
true.
that extra game, or maybe a little bit more time to kind of set up tactically against a team that is coming off the extra game, the extra 30 round of 32 game. And you got to rest and you got to just prepare a little bit longer for it. Whereas that team that just got out of the round of 32 is like, all right, we finally got out of the round of 32, and it's just boom, straight into round of 16. Like not as much time to prepare. So I feel like for West Ham, they're kind of inexperienced in this kind of position too. So it'll be interesting to see how David Moyes goes into it. I
Yeah.
I mean, I had all faith in them to get out of their group, unlike Leicester, who fumbled the bag there too. But
But the
shout out Brandon
competition's
Rogers.
a bit tough now. Like I said, there's some big teams in there with some big time players, like Erling Haaland playing in the Europa League. Like,
That's just sad.
yeah, that is sad, but it's also there's some really good teams that have been knocked out in the Champions League and the Europa League now. So West Ham, you know, they're a good side, but I don't know if they're have enough quality to kind of compete with some of those other European clubs. Like Napoli have been doing pretty well in Serie A. Barca, I wouldn't. Yeah, they've been struggling a lot, but Dortmund especially, that's a really tough team to face early on in the Europa League competition in terms of knockout stages. If
This is
West
really
Ham
random, but I just want to see West Ham versus Barcelona so bad.
see them go to the
That's
Camp Nou,
a neat matchup. Like,
Declan Rice in the Camp Nou.
yeah, that's gonna be crazy. Please, Barcelona and West Ham, just get far enough to just get a matchup, please. Like that. That would be one of the coolest matchups I probably will see. Where it's just imagine the Barcelona team just at the Olympic Park.
That'd be wild. Instead
That'd
of
be
going to like,
insane.
like Stamford Bridge, they're going to the Olympic Park to face
Yeah.
West Ham.
Oh my gosh. To face David Moyes.
Yeah, beat Xavi.
Jeez.
So yeah, Europa
Please let
League.
that happen.
Europa League is interesting. I mean, like the only Premier League side left in it is West Ham, and I have hopes that West Ham can go far, but I think ultimately they might, kind of crash out in the round of 16. I don't know if they can get past.
I have full faith in them.
Oh,
Like,
really?
yeah, just the blind faith. Because I mean, they're right. Although they just soiled against Arsenal in the Premier League, they're still in fifth. They're challenging for the top four still,
Yeah,
and I mean, they're still a decent squad. And against like certain other teams in this league or in the Europa League, like Barcelona right now, like there's certain teams like that they still have the advantage on. And I still feel like they have a pretty strong squad as long as everyone can stay healthy.
yeah,
And with certain players like Declan Rice still playing out of this world, Kurt Zuma coming into what Kurt Zuma was supposed to be at Chelsea, and then Ben Rama coming in, and the list goes on. We kind of praised them last week, giving some more praise this week. But West Ham, the forever dark horse team, I gotta
Yeah,
give faith in them because it's also just funny just to see West Ham doing this well. It's just you never expect it from a team that was in relegation
that's
just like a
true.
couple seasons ago.
That's true.
So
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see what ends up happening with them in the Europa League. But moving on to like the Europa Conference League, finally, like the third and last competition in Europe. As we mentioned before, Leicester they fumbled the bag, and now they're in the Europa Conference League, and Tottenham are not in it, but also in it. Yeah, unfortunately, they had to postpone their match against Rennes in the Europa Conference League, and I believe it was their last match day with in the Conference League. But I think UEFA or Rennes basically said that they couldn't do that. It was like against the law to do that. So I think they've like forfeited the match. So right now, if you see like it's like a tie between Rennes or Tottenham to be in that spot, to be in the round of 32 there. But it's all really confusing. So I'm just going to assume that they're not in it. And Leicester City's the only team in it just to make it easier on us because it's really confusing. But Leicester are not facing Rangers. They're actually facing a team called Randers in the Conference League. And I couldn't tell you a single thing about the team they're facing, but they're somehow got themselves into this competition. And it was funny because after they got eliminated in the Europa League, Brendan Rodgers had a post game quote, and he was like, "The Europa Conference League, I honestly have no idea what that is, what that competition is." So you have a manager that doesn't even know what the competition's about. They're most for sure going to be knocked out of this conference.
it's literally Leicester's to lose at this point. Like, just it's a free trophy. I mean, that's what we said about Tottenham, but I mean, they really just did not care about this competition. I honestly feel like this maybe the prize money's not big enough for the team to care because for like the international competitions like the Audi Cup, things like that over the summer, it's more like to showcase for the fans. But this one, and then maybe the prize money for that and like international summer leagues might be almost equivalent. Maybe that's why like Tottenham didn't really put out a good squad against their competition that no one really still knew about too. Like I can't even when you put down Leicester City versus Randers on our note sheet, I thought he misspelled Rangers, but no, it's actually just Randers,
Yeah.
most random team. So not only does Brandon Rodgers not know what this competition is, but he might not even know what the competition is. Like if anyone out there knows, shout out to if there's a Randers fan listening to this podcast right now, but all due respect, we don't know who you are. It's a pretty random league with random teams. Well, Leicester's in it, so it's theirs to lose.
Yeah, I mean, it's theirs to lose, but how motivated are they going to be? Like, are they going to be to like win it? Maybe they might be a little bit more motivated because their chances of top four have pretty much diminished because they've been so poor in the Premier League. And honestly, Brendan Rodgers could lose his job because they've just not been really good this season. But it's a huge L for Leicester to like miss out on Europa League. Like a team like Leicester, they definitely should be good enough to qualify out of the Europa League group stage. I mean, it's just a big, massive L for the club this season, the way they've been
Can you
performing.
can you even watch Europa Conference League games?
Yeah, you can.
Do they?
It's on Paramount Plus, but the thing is, it's on the same time as Europa League.
Oh,
So it's like you got to pick and choose what you're gonna watch.
it's like, do you want do you want garbage or do you want
More garbage.
Gosh dang.
Yeah, so
Um,
they do play on Thursday nights as well, but yeah, like as Tyler mentioned, it's like you got to choose from Europa League or Europa Conference League, and
it's like,
I don't know anyone who's watching Europa Conference League unless you're a fan of that specific team.
do you want the Knights in or do you want Motel 8? It's like, which one do you want? Jeez.
Yeah, but you mentioned it was Leicester City's to lose. I don't think they're going to win it because I just don't know if they're going to be motivated enough to be in this competition.
Honestly, I think that's really what it comes down to. It's like they have all the potential, they have everything, all the pieces needed. Is like, do they just have the mentals, just the motivation to even get through? So
And
we'll
you're
see
not
how.
you're not a big fan of Brendan Rodgers, who has like you said like one of
I,
the worst mentals.
I'm not a fan of Brandon Rodgers in big games.
Yeah.
That's what I'll say. When I mean, he proved me wrong in the FA Cup final, but you know, we got to see if he can consistently do it. Because now after that, it's like he's kind of hit a peak, and then it's like, oh, he's gonna keep going. No, he's gonna
What happened at
crash back
Liverpool?
down to earth. Liverpool, he got second place many times, and that was like his peak. And it was just, I mean, for this, it's just sad. This is even worse than that. They gave me at second right now.
Man, it's tough times for Leicester, but yeah, that kind of wraps up on the Champions League or the European, I guess, competition of like updates of what's happening in the Premier League, but also generally speaking. But
Mhm,
as we normally like to close out the shows with a preview of just the next, I guess, biggest three games, but unfortunately, we're not going to be doing a preview section this week because there's actually been kind of a rise of COVID cases in the Premier League clubs, specifically at Manchester United and Tottenham. And there have been a decent amount of games that have been postponed because of COVID outbreaks at certain clubs. I know recently Burnley, Watford was postponed, but also Manchester United versus Brentford was postponed, and Tottenham and I believe Brighton was also postponed as well.
mhm.
So there's been a decent amount of games, like I said before, that have been postponed, and we've just been seeing it. There's been a lot of rise in COVID-19 cases, and probably the first time we've seen this many COVID cases since I guess Project Lockdown or Project Restart or since
Yeah.
lockdown happened. Because relatively last season it was kind of held under control, but this season I think the COVID rules have been kind of laxed or relaxed a little bit because of fans coming back in the stadium. And I don't know if we're going to see a full season shutdown. I just don't think it's going to be possible because of the World Cup coming up, European competitions, what we just discussed. But I wouldn't be surprised if I was gonna say maybe a like a reduction in fans coming in, but really it's just been the players that have been getting infected. So I would think that the Premier League would enforce like harsher and more stricter COVID protocols to kind of ensure that players can stay negatively tested, and if they break the rules, there's going to be a fine. So I feel like that might be coming in to play, but I don't think we'll see a fan reduction in stadiums or playing inside closed stadiums because no other European league has done that just yet. Um, so I would think everything will be, I guess, normal sailing, but I feel like there's going to be harsher restrictions being put into place for all Premier League clubs to hopefully follow suit and maintain that the season goes on when it should be.
Yeah. I think there are certain countries like Austria maybe that have a bit of a lockdown right now. I think if I remember correctly, there's a couple like replays I saw of certain Champions League games where there was a crowd, but it's not as like big, I guess, in England right now. It's kind of like US, I would feel like, where it's out there. People are unfortunately getting infected, but I feel like the world's still moving on for them. I think the main thought for this is if there is going to be a delay, it'll mainly be team based and just for like certain games. So I don't think it'll be like a shutdown for the league because
Yeah,
now they have protocols as opposed to before.
yeah,
They
it's
didn't
just
really know what to do. It's like,
yeah,
let's just shut down everything. We have no idea what to do.
yeah,
So now they have plans and like what to do, and vaccines are out there. So I think because of all these protocols and like the solutions and like the options for how to prevent it and how to mitigate it are out there now. I don't see a stoppage like we did back in the days where it's like, all right, we're gonna take a break from the Premier League for a few months. I
yeah,
think it would just be games here and there that'll
yeah.
be made up eventually. It'll be a little rough because if you miss some games in the Christmas period, you could miss 3 games if you just miss a whole week.
Yeah,
So
Tottenham's already 3 games behind, and Manchester United are 1 game behind, and they could potentially be 2 games if they do postpone this upcoming weekend against Brighton, which there have been potential talks about. And it also messes up kind of the league table too, because if you're a team that is, been playing all your games normally, and you think all of a sudden, oh, I'm in fourth place now, but then you look behind and it's Manchester United, Tottenham have 3 or 4 games, in hand, and they're only 4 points away from you. There's more likely they're not going to catch up to you. So it makes things a little bit difficult to predict, but also it puts a little bit more pressure on certain players to perform to pick up wins when they need to pick up wins.
mhm. And the one interesting thing I would point out that's kind of something I've kind of observed is that COVID is still pretty prolific and still pretty prevalent. I think that's the word I was looking for. It's still prevalent in other leagues, not only in soccer but also like NFL too.
Yeah.
And we've seen when a player goes down with COVID in like the NFL, usually like an NFL team has enough depth. Like they have like 50-man squads. So like usually like a backup player can take over for here or like a certain player. But for soccer, it's a little different where the squad numbers aren't as big. So
Yeah.
if all of a sudden like 8 players get
Yeah, you have
COVID,
like just like a youth squad at that
you have
point.
a youth squad, and
And
that's
certain players
caused
aren't even registered in the Premier League to even play this
that's
season.
also true.
You have like
Like
only a
you can
certain
only
amount.
have mhm. You can only have a certain amount of players registered for the Premier League from every club. So that's also going to be interesting to see how that kind of pans out, because it was kind of weird to see that there was an outbreak or news of an outbreak at Tottenham, for example,
Yeah.
but the game didn't get delayed until a certain number of players were reported to be infected.
Yeah.
So we don't really know if there's a threshold that the Premier League is looking at, where it's like, all right, after this number, we gotta have to delay the game. It's kind of crazy that that's even a thing they
Hmm.
have to consider, but that's something just to keep in mind, where it's a little scary just to see it kind of make the news again for being as big as I believe that, like, they haven't really seen this many cases in players since, yeah, as you just mentioned, Project Restart, like right in
Yeah.
the beginning. So for this, it's gonna be some news to kind of keep in mind and to kind of keep a watch on, but it's a little scary to see.
Yeah, hopefully,
Hopefully,
if more people get the booster shot, hopefully we'll see the cases kind of go down, and we'll be able to kind of go back and safely, play football and just enjoy it and watch, the players play in front of packed stadiums, and that's kind of the joy of it. But for the time being, it's a little worrying, but hopefully, they can kind of push through and figure out a way to kind of ride the ship a little bit, and eventually just get back to being normal. But we'll see when that happens. Hopefully, it comes soon. But yeah, that's why we're not, I guess, having any preview or games to preview this weekend, just because there's a possibility some could get postponed. So we just don't know. But that kind of wraps up season 4, episode 135 for us. As we always say, you can subscribe to us on our YouTube channel at the Premier Pod, and also subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts. And if you do listen to the show on Apple Podcasts, be sure to leave us a review. It helps us out and get us noticed to other podcasters and other viewers on Apple Podcasts. But if you don't want to leave a review, just want to listen, that's totally fine. But if you also want to share this podcast with a friend that's interested in the Premier League or soccer, that helps us out. And, we enjoy the support any way we get it. You can also give us a follow at the Premier Pod on Twitter and Instagram. Leave us any questions about future, I guess, talking points or future episodes that you would like us to discuss, or anything that's on your mind, and we'll be sure to get back to you and respond. But yeah, that kind of does it for us. Season 4, episode 135. Thank you guys once again for listening. Peace.
peace.